All right, what's up, everybody? So Q&A number 5 today. I skipped it last month. I started to film it and realized I had way too many questions. I was a little bit in over my head in terms of storage on my phone and how much time I had to actually film a Q&A. It was going to be like 3 hours. So I picked 14 questions from this last Q&A that I'm going to go through today. The system moving forwards is going to be any questions that you have, leave them in the comments of this video and they'll go on Q&A number 6. I want everybody to take a look at the comments. Even if you don't leave a comment, upvote the questions that you want to see, and that way I can get an accurate assessment of which questions you guys want to see so I can pick which ones will be in the next Q&A moving forward. So I'm probably going to do like 12 or 15 questions, probably once or twice a month on these. So with all that being said, that's the new system. Let me know if you have any questions. If it gets upvoted, I'll take a look and probably include it in the next Q&A. So first question I've got here from Victor Lopez is, what is your split? And this is something I haven't talked about a whole ton on the channel. So basically, my split is always going to revolve around something that's high frequency. I like to train every muscle 2 or 3 times a week. I've tried bro splits in the past and they just don't work that well for me. I just maintain my gains throughout them no matter how much I pump up the volume. When I have high frequency and moderate to high volume, that is key for me. It works so well, and that's what I recommend for most people, but it's definitely not like superior by far to any other split. So let me dive a little bit deeper into it. So modified upper lower, I have 3 upper days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then I have 2 lower days on Tuesday and Thursday. So the upper days are basically going to be upper back, so primarily like mid traps, rhomboids, rear delts. I basically just do either a machine row, I know you guys can't see it, or some type of Yates row variation on my upper days for my back work, and then everything else is just as usual for an upper day. So a decent amount of chest work, either 1 or 2 lifts for chest, 3 or 6 sets total, lots of tricep work, a little bit of bicep, lots of forearm work. Occasionally, once a week, I'll do a little bit of shoulder work, but nothing crazy. That's more so just for some maintenance on them. My lower days are primarily some type of deep knee flexion to grow the quads, a lot of lat work, some ab work, some calf work, and leg extensions. So it's primarily quads and lats, a little bit of hamstrings, abs, and calves in there too. So that's my split. I won't spend this next 10 minutes going into all the details, but modified upper lower, I'm training 5 days a week right now, which is different for me. I'm used to 6 or 7, but I'm trying to give myself a little bit more recovery these days. So next question from, I am so blind, Ali HK. How important is tempo for muscle gains? Tempo is one of those things where it's like you either have it right or wrong. There's no way to like optimize it because there's just a gigantic range of tempo that all works the same. So with tempo, I do like to pretty much I call it like a controlled explosive concentric. So if I'm doing like, say, an overhead extension, I'll just kind of press like that. Obviously it's going to slow down, but I'm never going to like go as fast as I can. And when you're lowering it, like as long as you're controlling it on the way down, there's no magic second count. There's no magic number to lower it down to. So as long as it's under control, that's going to be key. A lot of muscle is built on the eccentric, so the negative when you're lengthening out that muscle. That's when a lot of muscle is built. So you do have to make sure you're at least controlling it. It doesn't have to be anything crazy like a 4 or 5 second negative. There's no extra benefit to that. It'll probably just drag out your sets a little bit longer for no reason. Just control it. If you want to take an extra second just to make sure you're going long enough, that's totally fine too. You'll probably just have to use a little bit less weight, or you might just get less reps, but it should produce the same hypertrophy in most lifts. Next question, Chris Kordatsis. I hope I pronounced that right, but I probably didn't. When should you rotate a lift? Can I always keep certain exercises in the program, like the back squat? So that is a very general question. So I'm going to try and give the most general answer I can here. Rotating lifts. There's a lot of different factors that can factor into rotating lifts. The biggest ones I would say would be, I think nagging injuries or pains and boredom are going to be the biggest variables when you're rotating lifts. It's a hard question to answer without context, so I don't want to pretend I know how to answer this properly, but I don't want to just leave you with nothing. So rotating lifts. If you're getting bored of a lift, you can rotate it out of your program. make sure that you've progressed in that lift long enough. I'm not going to give you a time frame because I don't know the context of your program, but you do want to you have to realize, I guess you have to understand if it's the lift that's the issue or if it's your progression scheme that's the issue. If you're just running, say, a 5x5 on bench and you're plateaued and you can't up the weight 5 pounds and you've been stuck with that for a couple weeks, it might not be the bench press that's the issue. It could just be the progression scheme that you're using. So maybe the 5x5 is no longer working for you. With that being said, on the other side of the spectrum, let's say bench is starting to hurt your shoulder. Maybe it's time to change things up a little bit. And this one, the next point is going to be super bro sciencey, but I'm going to say it anyways because this is what I like to do when I rotate lifts. So I just rotated neutral grip pull-ups out of my program. I rotated them out, one, because there was a slight regression, and it could have been a recovery issue. I might just be doing them too frequently, or I might be taking them too close to failure, or maybe just training back with a little bit too high volume or proximity to failure. That's up for me to assess. It's not something that you can just immediately know. You have to experiment and think about these things. But I rotated them out primarily because I wasn't really feeling them in my lats. I wasn't really getting a pump. Like that's not a valid reason to always rotate something out, but it's also not invalid. It's one of those things where it's like, if I'm not quite feeling it and I feel very stuck, like I'd rather just do something else that works really well. So I'm doing neutral grip pull downs, like basically targeting my lats the same way, and they feel incredible. So I got those in. I'm doing overhand grip pull-ups now. So I hope that's a good little insight to how I rotate lifts. But yeah, it's either like a legit thing, like a nagging injury or a pain, or maybe you're really stalled out, or maybe you're bored, or it's just you just don't feel like doing them anymore, and you're not getting a pump and whatnot. Like that's not a valid reason, but like I said, it's not an invalid reason either. So yeah, I hope it's hard to answer that question without context. So that's the best answer I can give you for now. Next question from Dangerous D. What's your thoughts on training with a Smith machine? So Smith machines are awesome, guys. Smith machines are great. They're super versatile. I would love to have one for the home gym one day. I'd have to get rid of something to make the room for it. I would honestly consider getting rid of my leg extension machine for that. But the people that dislike Smith machines are the people that try and use them in place of a barbell. A Smith machine isn't a barbell. A Smith machine, the way I like to look at it is it's basically like a hammer strength machine, like a plate loaded machine. It's just more versatile. It's just a barbell, so you can change your grip width. You can put a bench under it and do bench variations. You can do like squat variations. There's a million things you can do on a Smith machine. It doesn't replace certain benefits that the barbell has over a machine, and you can't expect it to because it's a machine. So I think at first glance, if you compare it to a barbell, it's not better or worse, it's just different, and it can't replace a barbell, and that should be pretty straightforward, but for some reason people get that wrong. So just treat it like it's a machine in your program and don't think it can replace a free weight, if that makes sense. Next question from Rob K. Do you think it's a good idea to buy a cable machine with a high and low pulley station with a load capacity of only 90 kilos? That's pretty heavy. I wouldn't say only 90 kilos. I have very limited space, and I can only install a cable machine that can be attached to my bench right now. I only have bench and rack and pull-up bar, so only install a cable machine that can be attached to the bench. I guess I don't know the specifics of that. I would buy a cable machine 100%. It brings so much versatility to home gyms, and like the footprint is tiny. I mean, I have a cable station. It's right behind my camera, but it legit takes up 4 square feet, and there's so much you can do on them. There's a bazillion things you can do on a cable machine, especially if you have a small area. Like a cable machine is one of the first things I'd recommend you get for home gym. I genuinely have no idea why more people don't have them. Like there's this plate loaded cable machine from Titan Fitness that I have. It has the full height adjustments all the way up and down. It was $200. Like that's the cheapest thing you're ever going to find for your home gym, aside from like little attachments and stuff like that. Like that's a legit piece of equipment. It's not perfect, but you can get them for pretty cheap. They take up no space. Like that's one of the first things I got, and the cable machine is one of the first things I recommend. It brings so much versatility to your training for no space and very, very little money. Highly recommend getting a cable if you can. Worst case, like you could even get like a Ghetto cable system. I know they actually make them, but if you just get a pulley and coated wiring from like Home Depot or something, they can cut it to how you want it. Just get cable clamps and carabiners with a pulley, and I legit used a bucket with bricks. You could probably get a loading pin or something like that, and you can make a homemade one for like $30 or something like that. So I recommend everybody to do that. You legit just hang it over your pull-up bar and you're good. Next question is going to be from Chad Kirk. Does the strength curve of an exercise matter for hypertrophy? For example, one exercise is hardest at the bottom versus another one is harder at the top. Yes, I do think the strength curve of an exercise matters for hypertrophy. That is why I'm such a big fan of machines. I think certain machines are engineered to match the strength curve of your body. So you take something like a barbell row where you have to cheat to make it more effective. But if you want to keep it a little bit more strict, a machine row, most of them are designed to where it's on a hinge like this. So as you pull up, the weight gets a little bit lighter since it's fighting less against gravity, and that matches that weaker contraction than the first start of the movement when you're rowing. So strength curve does matter. Find ways to work around it. If you're primarily using free weights, cheat reps, like a good controlled safe cheat rep is never a bad idea. Using a little bit of momentum is never really a bad idea unless it's on a dangerous lift. Like don't take that at face value, what I just said. But if you're doing like some type of row or some type of pull down or something like that, a little bit of cheat can go a long way. Next question is from Skarner. I think I said that right. I'm an early intermediate trying to program for mainly upper body while having lower body on the back burner. What do you think about doing 3 push workouts, 3 pull workouts, and 1 leg workout a week? 3 sets of vertical push pull, 3 sets of horizontal push pull, 3 sets of biceps, triceps, each push and pull workout. Would you say a regular push pull leg split with higher volume on the push pull workouts would be better? Yeah, so if you're doing push pull legs, probably don't go to the gym 7 days a week. All 3 of those days are going to be very taxing unless you program them very well with exercise selection and volume. I would say I wouldn't recommend that split. I'd probably recommend an upper lower, but your lower day doesn't have to be all legs. You can do a little bit of volume for your legs, but primarily keep it as a pull day. So this is something back when I was younger, back when I was a kid, I would do a push day. So I'd do chest, shoulders, tries, and then my pull day would be legs, back, and buys. So I'd do like leg extensions or a couple sets of squats, and then just do an entire back and bicep workout. So that basically covered all that I need to. I would say just find what your minimum effective volume is that you can maintain your legs on, and you should be pretty much good from there. And you can still train that. Even if you're just in the gym 4 days a week, like you're already at enough volume and frequency there if you program it properly. But if you do want to go 5 or 6 days a week, that can work really well too. So that's probably the direction I'd steer you in there. I don't think you need what that 1 leg day on Sunday. I'd say take that little bit of leg volume and just spread it out across the 3 pull days. And yeah, you should be fine from there. Next question from Claudio SDDD. 1, what do you think about hypertrophy phases and strength phases? Basically spending 6 months in each phase. I need a little bit more context, but assuming that you're training purely for hypertrophy because this is a bodybuilding channel that I'm on, I would not recommend that. I'm definitely against strength blocks. I don't see much value in them, especially if you're going like below that 5 or 6 rep range on a lot of your lifts. I have an entire video on that, so definitely check out my strength blocks. I think I called it strength blocks are a waste of time. So answer's pretty straightforward there. I'd say just watch that video. You probably have because you asked that before I posted that video. Number 2, do you think that tonnage is the new 1RM? Is this the best proxy for size? I would say tonnage in itself is somewhat irrelevant because you can manipulate it with your volume and your rep ranges. Tonnage comes into play when you're referencing your training history. So an increase in tonnage over time is going to be key. It's okay if your tonnage drops off because you're subbing out a lift for something that's a little bit more direct, I guess. So like if I was gonna go from like a low bar squat, squatting in the 400s to like a plat squat where I'm at 200, like yeah, my tonnage is gonna be way less. But as long as I was always progressing with low bar and now I drop down, but I'm still always progressing with my plat squat, that's still a good thing. So I don't think there's a specific number with tonnage or a specific amount total, but as long as it's progressing, as long as you're progressing with what's in front of you and your weekly volume is still relatively similar to what it's always been, you should be good. I do have a video coming up where I'm going to touch on this a little bit. Next question from Eneri. Another question with your novice program. I understand the total reps are to be performed over 3 sets like an evolving rep range or rep goal system. For example, OHP is programmed for 25 to 40 reps. Does that mean you should do 3 sets of 8 to 13? Wouldn't 12 reps be a bit too much for a compound like OHP? So I'm going to answer that first part here. 12 reps definitely isn't too much for a compound like OHP. People do 20 sets on squats and grow like crazy from it. I would say the only lift that I wouldn't recommend going high reps on is just going to be conventional or sumo deadlifts for obvious reasons. But yeah, I wouldn't. The thing that I like about the rep goal system is you don't have to worry about hitting a certain target of for each set. So you can have that attrition from set to set. So you're not confined to any rep range, and that's not always a bad thing. But if the rep range per set you're giving yourself is too small, that can lead to some sandbagging. So what I'd say is don't worry about how many reps you're doing each set, just worry about the total. That's going to be key with the rep goal system. And he also asks, and since bench is programmed for 20 to 30 sets, I'm assuming you meant reps, so technically 3x6 to 10, yeah, you meant reps. Wouldn't those reps be a bit too hard to add 5 pounds constantly and reach 225 bench in 1 to 1.5 years? Or is that the power builder, starting strength, strong list 5x5 Coper inside me talking? I wouldn't worry about numbers, man. I just worry about progressing. I'm not a huge fan of strength standards, as you guys saw in my last video. But yeah, I would say those reps wouldn't be too hard. I think you're viewing the rep goal system as a weekly progression, which there's no time frame that I personally have with the rep goal system. I mean, obviously, it depends on each person's situation, but there's no timeline I could give to you for this. So make sure that your reps are slowly going up over time. You don't have to add weight every week. You only add weight when you hit the rep goal. So I hope that clears things up a little bit. And yeah, just push for the goal, but don't force it. Like if you're cheating your technique and changing things around a little bit, that's artificial progression. But push hard to failure with consistent, solid form and technique. Next question from Lightbringer 357. Question for the next one. There seems to be a lot of folks advocating for training back in some capacity every workout and even every day. For example, doing one pull-up variation Monday, then maybe a lat pull-down variation Tuesday or a row of some sort, or even doing some different pull-up variations each workout. I know the back is a resilient muscle group, but I still feel like it does need time to recover, especially if you train with a close proximity to failure. So my take on back training, I do think you can go super high frequency here. I think I train my back personally every single day, but and here's the asterisk for this one. Basically, your back isn't one muscle group. It's a ton of little muscle groups that's spread throughout your entire back. So obviously you have your upper traps, you have your mid traps, rhomboids, you have rear delts kind of count too, spinal erectors, lower back, lats. Like I could go on forever. Your back is a gigantic muscle group, and it's not, the way I want you to view your back is it's not one muscle group, it's a bunch of different muscle groups. It's almost like calling like your abs part of your chest and your front delts your chest and kind of calling it all one thing. So you can target completely different regions of your back and train back every single day. Like take a deadlift, for example, or even, conventional Romanian or whatever, doesn't matter. That's going to work your lower back and your spinal erectors a ton. Is it going to do a bunch for your lats? Not really. So you can train your lats the day before, the day after, and now you've trained back, say, 3 days in a row. And then you still have to train like a row variation. You still have to train your upper traps. So you can train a different part of your back every day. The way that I see back training, there's 4 major components to it. I see spinal erector slash lower back, so hip hinges or certain knee flexions. You're going to get trained through that. The next part's going to be lat training, so primarily vertical pulls or something from 45 degrees. That's going to be lat focused, especially with an underhand or a neutral grip. There's also what I call upper back training, which is going to be a horizontal row typically, and generally flaring your elbows out a little bit. So at about a 45-degree angle, this is upper back. So I would call that mid traps, rhomboids, a little bit of rear delts in there too. And then the last portion is going to be upper traps. So these guys up here, power shrugs, regular shrugs, machine shrugs, like all this stuff works really well for your upper traps. So there's 4 different ways and even more that you have to train your back. And I mean, that's not even including like pullovers or anything. So there's a bunch of different movement patterns for your back and a bunch of different ways to target the muscle, and they all target different regions. So you can train your back every day. I wouldn't say do pull-ups and lat pull-downs or barbell rows every day, but target different regions of it. They all kind of carry over a little bit to each other. It's impossible to completely isolate one part, but you can bias parts of your back pretty heavily. Next question here from MDR. Hi, really enjoying your channel. Keep up the good work. I have a question, please. Thanks, man. As a 38-year-old man who has 2 young kids and works, I can only train 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and currently do full body. Recovery is proving hard. Would I be better going into a push-pull leg 3-day split so that I do get better recovery for the joints, etc.? Also, whenever I train the 4 to 6 rep range, I generally get pain, but my strength is weak. Should I just stick to 8 to 12 and progressively overload in those ranges? Thank you, Matt. I would say if recovery is an issue, please avoid the 4 to 6 rep range. Definitely go a little bit higher. I would say go upwards of like 8 to 10. I'd say 10 to 15 is going to be the sweet spot for you. It's so much easier on recovery, and the muscle growth gets you just as much muscle growth, if not better. Like when you're at 6 or less reps, the muscle growth isn't going to be quite as good. So just even if recovery wasn't a factor here, I'd say bump the reps up a little bit more, because it just guarantees that you're getting better growth as long as your proximity to failure is the same. So stick to that. I would also, you said something about a push-pull leg. So would I be better going into a push-pull leg? I would say stick with full body. You want that frequency, or even an upper-lower full or variation of that. The rep range is what you're going to have to change. I don't know your exercise selection, but you might have to change that around. Like if you're doing squats and deadlifts and barbell rows every time, or even twice a week for that matter, like that might be a little bit much. Squats you can get away with, but deadlifts and barbell rows, I'd keep that to a minimum. Next question from Ghetto. If I'm stressed for time and I can only do 9 sets in total for my workout, of a total of 3 isolation exercises, would I be better off doing all sets for 1 exercise, for example, 9 sets of biceps, and leave the other exercises out for the day, or should I split it up into 3 sets of all 3 isolations? I'm actually going to answer that first part now. So I would split it up. You will get better gains if you do split it up a little bit. I would just do 3 different lifts at the dumbbell rack, or bring dumbbells over to a cable or something like that. There's very easy ways to get variation. I would say just if you're stressed for time, dumbbells, cable, selectorized machines, those are going to be your best friends. Even bands too. Like you don't have to do a whole ton for setup. You just want to avoid just avoid using barbells, because I know it's simple, but you still have to load plates, re-rack, unrack the plates and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I would just say, stick with dumbbells or cables. That's going to be key. Just keep it quick. Next part of the question, are the 3 sets of 3 isolation lifts even worth any significant stimulus, assuming I do at least 7 usually, or would it be better to purely focus on filling out 1 exercise to get the normal amount of stimulus and tonnage, at least for 1 lift? P.S. Assuming that I'm not prioritizing any specific body part. Let's see. Purely focus on filling out. I'm not sure what that means, to get the normal amount of stimulus and tonnage. I would just Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that, so I'm not gonna try and answer that question. But the first part of the question, I think I got you. Next question from Colby Sullivan. Hey man, love the videos. Much appreciated, Colby. I've heard you discuss your powerlifting background and issues with the big compound list for hypertrophy. It seems like many people run minimalist programs or start on bodybuilder style machine isolation focused programs, make gains for a while, and then switch styles a few years in and milk out greater gains of the opposite philosophy. It seems like for yourself and other impressive naturals, the real answer for natural bodybuilding is experiment and squeeze gains out of every training philosophy over many years. It's kind of a nebulous question, but is there something to a kind of everything works, so do everything over time? Um, I would say I would say no. It doesn't hurt to experiment, but there's definitely methods that are better and definitely methods that are worse. I'd say start with the methods that have a better reputation and experiment with those first. If something turns out not to work for you, just keep trying. And if you've tried a bunch of different methods and you have a couple that work really well, stick with one of those, or maybe bounce back between like I'd say bounce back and forth between like two or three methods that work really well for you. Um, I don't. I think you can get to most of your potential with just kind of trying a little bit of everything, but I it's going to take you a lot longer, and it really depends how much time you invest into each method. So if you're trying a new method every month, I don't think that's going to work very well. But if you're like, all right, well, over 10 years, I'm going to try 10 different methods, that's probably a smarter idea. If you're looking for the best results, I probably wouldn't do that though. So actually, that's it. That was the last question. If you guys have any questions you want to ask, leave them in the comments. And like I said earlier, go upvote the ones that you like. But yeah, with that being said, that's it for today.